Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. So we're currently in week 2 of the Expedition League, and I wanted to give my thoughts on what I've learnt so far about this mechanic, how you can use it effectively, and also which expedition encounters you want to do, and which ones are pretty skippable. So firstly, there are 4 NPCs tied to the mechanic. Rog, Gwynnen, Tujen, and Dannig. These 4 NPCs are not created equal. It is my rule that if I'm running a map and I encounter Tujen, then I will always do the encounter. It is also my rule that if I encounter Dannig, I will always do the encounter. However, Rog and Gynnen, I'm not going to do them unless something jumps out at me and says, hey, here's a genuine reason to do this encounter. The reason for that is that the encounter rewards for Rog and Gynnen are far more RNG dependent than they are for Tujen and for Dannig, and they are also just don't have quite the same consistent ceiling. So it's been my experience that in the time I've been playing this league, the majority of my exalted orb drops have come from Tujen's haggle window. I don't know if this is consistently the case amongst other players or not. I don't think it is, but Tujen definitely does drop a lot of exalted shards. Or when I say drop, he'll offer to haggle for a lot of exalted shards. I've had 19 exalted shards and 1 exalt today from him, and I've had more than that on previous days as well. So yeah, Tujen is really, really good for just raw currency. He'll also give you a lot of Chaos Orbs and Alteration Orbs, and every now and again he'll have an item as well that's pretty good. With Tujen, my general approach to his haggle window is that if I really, really, really want the item, let's say it's a pure Exalted Orb, then in that case I'll pay his full price. I don't want to take any chances with it. But if the item is something I would like to have, but I'm also willing to take a little bit of a risk of losing it, then what I'll do is I'll offer him 40% of what he's asking. He doesn't seem to usually ever withdraw the item from sale at that. I'm not going to promise that it never happens, but usually he'll come back with a counter offer, and then what I'll do is I will keep offering him sort of a little bit more each time. So 40% of his original price. When that's rejected, I'll then go to 50. When that's rejected, I'll go to 55. And usually he'll accept 55% of the original price. But if the item is big and I really want it, then I just pay 100% of his price because I don't want to take any chances with an exalt or something like that. So that's Tujen. Very straightforward. You want to prioritize getting as many of his currencies from his encounters as you can. For Dannig, Dannig is very similar to Tujen because any of Dannig's items can be turned into Tujen's ones, and that works for the others as well. Like if you have items for Dannig, you can turn them into Rog's currency or Gwynnen's currency. But in practice, you want to only use that to turn them into Tujen's currency or to buy other things from Dannig. Dannig sells logbooks. Logbooks are really, really good. Logbooks are this league's equivalent of blighted maps, and they are basically massive expedition encounters. One of the things with the expedition encounter concept is that it has a degree of built-in quadratic scaling. So what I mean by that is that it's not exponential scaling, but doubling the length of the encounter doesn't just double the amount of rewards you get. It roughly quadruples it. And so the fact that expedition logbooks give you 2.4 times as long an encounter as you get in a map means that they end up being something like 2.4 squared, so about 5.76 times as much loot baseline. But then you also have a bunch of extra special loot on top of that, and so those expedition logbooks, they are just loot fountains. They're not as much loot as a simulacrum. Maybe half a simulacrum, but they're definitely more than a blighted map of comparable tier. So, in terms of the other NPCs, so that is Tujen, the currency fiend. That is Dannig covered, the best of the lot. Then we have Rog. Rog will give you access to bad base items and then allow you to use crafts that are absurdly powerful on them. These crafts can often be better than harvest crafting, even pre-nerf harvest crafting. But you have very little agency over which ones you use. Rog ultimately is he's a good place to learn a bit about crafting, And so I highly recommend playing around with him, given that his currencies just aren't that, they're not that precious. So feel free to just use them pretty recklessly on just trying to craft an upgrade using his abilities. Where I do suggest using your ROG currencies though, the best things I have found, crafting jewels is pretty good. Crafting physical damage weapons that are on the best basis for that. So something like a Siege Axe, yeah, give that a shot, see what you can do, and see if you can make something out of it with ROG. But generally expect that there's going to be a huge amount of variance involved in any ROG craft. Lastly, you have Gwynnen. Gwynnen is the gambler one. Based upon Geed from Diablo 2, what will happen with Gwynnen is that she will sell you, she'll have an inventory listing of items, and those items will have no information about what they do. It'll just be a base type and an item level. So for instance, you might be buying an item level 82 Siege Axe from her. She will then apply something that is kind of thematically like a Chance Orb, but that has more favorable results than a Chance Orb would have. So she'll apply that, and then she'll give you the result. The vast majority of the time, you'll get a rare item that is useless, or you'll get a magic item that's useless. You can get some unusual stuff from her. I have had 2 implicit corrupted rares. I have had unique items from her, but these seem pretty rare. I've created a list though. If you want to fish for unique items, these are the things that I consider to be the best choices for Gwynnen. Prophecy Wand, hoping to see a Void Battery. Siege Axe, hoping to see a Soul Taker. Fiend Dagger, hoping to see the very rare Arakali's Fang. Although Arakali's Fang is much rarer than Soul Taker or Void Battery are, it is also something that, if you get it, it's worth a lot more in Trade League. Silk Gloves, hoping to see an Asenath's Gentle Touch. Archon Kite Shield, hoping to see a Prism Guardian. Leather Belt, hoping to see Headhunter. Studded Belt, hoping to see the Rizlatha's Coil. And all jewels. With jewels, you've got a few possibilities, and this is why I like jewels from Gwynnen. She could give you one of the few chase unique jewels. She could give you a corrupted rare or a 2 implicit corrupted rare, and those can sometimes be very good. And other times she'll just give you a rare jewel that happens to be good as well. So yeah, Gwynnen seems to be all right on jewels. I've heard plenty of reports of her dropping influenced items as well. Haven't seen this personally. I believe it happens. It just hasn't happened to me. It does seem to be pretty rare though. So that's the Rog and Gynnen. That's the 4 different NPCs covered. Let's talk about the actual encounters themselves. So with these encounters, there's a couple of different things, some of which are more obvious than others. Let's start with the obvious stuff. Unearthed Remnants. These have a massive little thing above the, sort of above them saying, hey, look at me. This is what I do. So Unearthed Remnants, yeah, they're really obvious. Now, one thing you need to be aware of. So the first line, the prefix, is what the Unearthed Remnant has as a drawback, and then the second one is its bonus. With the drawbacks, there are some of these that plenty of builds cannot do, just flat out cannot do. To give one example, this Unearthed Remnant has monsters are immune to fire damage. Now, the ones that are a flat immunity, and there are 5 of these, will be in yellow text. So they're really obvious. And, you might detonate one by a stupid mistake, but mistakes happen, and, it's no different to any other stupid mistake that gets your character killed or that wrecks your map. But with the Unearthed Remnants, there's a bunch of other ones that are more subtle and that are still very dangerous. So I wanted to point out a couple that you really need to watch for. The first one is monsters are 50% to block attacks and spells, and monsters have plus 5% max block. This is terrifying if you get 2 of them. So the first one effectively doubles the effective hit points of all of the monsters in that explosion chain from that point onwards. That's scary. But if you get 2 of them, you're now dealing with 85% block chance monsters. That is terrifying. If you get a third one, you're dealing with 90% block chance. So that's effectively 10 times their base durability. So that is no joke. The next one that's no joke for certain builds is the anti-chevrons wrappings option, which is monster hits kill players that are on less than 20% health. A lot of low life builds will die to 1 hit from that, and that applies to every monster in that chain, and it also does apply to their little ranged attacks as well. So don't take that if you're playing a low life build that is under 20% health. What you should probably do is just turn off a life reservation aura so that you are above 20% health, and then that one becomes basically free. The next one that you need to watch out for is that monsters remove 10% of mana and 10% of energy shield on hit. This will kill certain builds as well. It's only really dangerous when you're getting hit hard and fast, but you do get hit hard and fast because there's a lot of these monsters have small amounts of have like small attacks that hit you fast. There's a number of other things as well. Monsters are immune to critical strikes. Monsters are immune to curses that can be narrow build destroyers. So cast on critical strike, for instance, cannot deal with the hits against monsters, cannot be critical strikes. So that's the first thing you need to look at with the remnants. Once you've ascertained which ones you can do, you're looking generally for different things for different NPCs. So what you're looking for if you have Rog or Gwynnen is things that increase the amount of drops, such as this. Runic monsters have 35% chance to drop an additional essence. Things like this that grant all runic monsters additional drops, or that grant all unearthed chests additional drops. These are what you're looking for. And the particular thing that I will look for, and that this will trigger me into actually doing the encounter, I am looking for things like runic monsters have 50% increased chance to drop logbooks. Expedition logbooks are super juicy, they're super lucrative when you run them, and so I'm always looking for those. Additionally, things like monster pack size, and especially runic monsters are duplicated, these can provide you with a very large increase in the amount of runic monsters in your encounter, which can then multiply the amount of loot that you're going to get from everything else. So, I ignore all of the ones that increase monster XP. I don't think that they do very much. I don't think you get enough XP for that to be worthwhile. If I am dealing with Rog or if I'm dealing with Gwynnen, I'm only looking for those things. Particularly multipliers to the amount of logbooks you get, but also things like monsters have runic monsters have X% chance to drop this type of item, assuming that the item in question is good. Now, if I am dealing with Dannig or Tujen, then I'm instead looking for something different. I'll still take those mods, but the real thing I'm looking for is multipliers to the amount of artifacts that are dropped. So artifacts are the currencies, the vendor's currencies, and so for Dannig or for Tujen, those are particularly valuable. You can never have enough of them. And so, were this to be a Tujen encounter, and if this said excavated chests drop 50% increased artifacts, I'll be very happy to take that unearthed remnant. So that's the unearthed remnants. The next thing that needs to be mentioned is the chests. The chests come in 3 flavors. White flags like this, colorless / white flags like this one, yellow flags like this one, and red flags which look like the yellow ones but are more striking, and obviously are red. Those will become the unearthed chests. Unearthed chests by themselves are really, really boring and dull. They have very little in the way of loot unless you give them loot via remnants. So, remnants are one way of doing that. The other thing that can sometimes matter with them is that you will sometimes get an appreciable amount of artifacts out of them. That doesn't matter if it's Rog or Gwynnen, but that does matter if it is Tujen or if it is Dannig. The other thing that you're exploding though is these skulls. These skulls are the runic monsters. When they are exploded, they'll pop up as a runic monster. These are the only source of logbooks, or maybe not the only source. People do report getting them from unearthed chests, but every single logbook I have had has come from a runic monster. I've had about 20 of them drop, and yeah, all of them came from runic monsters. The logbooks are great. They're a massive version of these encounters. They also are the only ways to get the bosses. There's a number of challenges that are related to logbooks, and they drop stupendous amounts of the artifacts, the league currency. So for that reason, you want to really prioritize getting logbooks. Anyway, that's basically all that I've got to say here. The key is that you want to open up remnants that you can beat, leave the ones you can't beat unopened, and then you want to then try and focus on getting as much loot as you can out of the encounter. And also things go green when they're in the circle. So this one here, you'll see this this circle. Watch this yellow flag here. You'll see currently it's lit up in green. Now as I move away, there's the point where it cuts off. It stops being green here. One square closer and it's green again. So that gives you a bit of an indicator as to whether or not you have successfully got the runic monsters or whatever you're trying to target into the range of your explosive, because you don't want to have a situation where you are trying to detonate an explosion and you realize, oh, I'm actually not going to get the rewards that I want in there because I'm not close enough. So that's all I got in the way of tips and tricks here. If you got any comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I will just show you this encounter and probably possibly end up just getting overwhelmed and killed because I'm still playing Absolution and Absolution is really weak, especially on these encounters where it's so important to get your first kills. So you can see how it's really sort of struggling. I'm playing it ultra careful, abusing the doorway and still losing control of the fight, almost dead. And run. Why have I still got a warlord pack there? I'm completely out of flasks now, and I'm probably going to die horribly. And I died to a normal mob. But that should give you a bit of a sense as to how the encounters work. Comments and questions below. May your Orbs have interesting results, and I will see you in the next one.